I remember in 2001 standing backstage, about to go on and give the presentation of my life in front of 2,000 people. My heart was beating out of my chest. I remember the little thoughts, the insecure thoughts of losing in high school baseball because of me. I thought, how did I get here? I remember being 8 years old at a holiday gathering. Big Polish family, everyone laughing, my brother and cousin recapping Saturday Night Live and Steve Martin jokes, and my twin aunts laughing in harmony. Wah, wah. You couldn't not laugh. And I remember standing up, trying to jump in and continue the laughter. And whatever I said hushed the audience, my own family. It was embarrassing. I slid back down into my seat and I said, I will never, ever try to be funny again. And I didn't. In 1991, I was an entrepreneur. I had my own sub shop and I had to sell it at a loss. It was devastating. I had so many dreams and aspirations and I love business, but I failed. In fact, it was so bad. I was living at home with mom and dad. I had the business loan, but no business to pay it off. I had my school loans from college. I honestly couldn't see any way out. And my buddy gave me this motivational tape of a man named Brian Tracy. It was a motivational tape. It made me feel good, but he asked a question. He said, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? And in my head, I said, I'd be a comedian. How cool would it be to make an audience laugh and earn a living at that? That would be the ultimate. All of a sudden, the doubting voice in my head, the voice of reality said, but that's not you. You're not funny. It was true. I wasn't funny. But it wasn't the question. The question was, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? What do I have to lose? Because of these motivational tapes, I decided I needed to go to someone who has been there and done that. You see, when I told my friends and family about this idea to become a comedian, they thought I was crazy. I was stupid. Like, that's not you. But I decided I was going to ask someone who has been there and done that. You see, my friends and family, they compared me to Jerry Seinfeld. Someone just thinking about it to someone at the top of their profession. It's not fair. So I walked into this little comedy club in Worcester, Massachusetts, near where I lived. I was such a quiet, shy kid. I had to build up the courage just to talk to the comedian after the show and ask for advice. I said, hi, my name is Darren. I want to try this. What do I need to do? And he asked me a question. He said, are you funny? I said, no. He said, good. Good? What do you mean good? He went on to explain that people who are naturally funny, people who are class clowns, that's one skill set. But if you handed them a microphone and put them in front of a group of 100 strangers, they couldn't make them laugh. That can be learned. What? That can be learned? He handed me an ounce of hope. It still seemed crazy and ridiculous, but he said two things. Number one, you got to get the book. Like, there's a book about stand-up comedy? And he said, number two, you got to go to open mic nights and watch other people just starting out. Well, that made sense. My friends and family comparing me to Jerry Seinfeld, that's not fair. So a couple days later, I got the book and I went to this little stand-up comedy open mic night at Stitches in Boston, Mass. A little comedy club right outside of Fenway Park. I remember the sticky floor, the smell of stale beer. And I thought, ooh, how cool is this? And I watched people go up for their first time. And they were horrible. Horrible. I thought I could do that. I had nothing to lose. So I decided to try it. I went back every Sunday night for 2 months. It was April 26, 1992, Stitches, Boston, Mass. I remember I brought some of my friends with me just so I didn't chicken out. I told them, you make sure I go up there tonight because I'm never doing this again.
Did anybody ever notice that every other small town in New England takes one little small historical fact and makes it the greatest event in the world? Sorry for my voice, like fluctuating a little bit. But a lot of towns are like this.
I was visibly shaking. In fact, there was a point where I was so nervous that I was telling this joke about Dr. Goddard, who launched a rocket in my hometown, that I said the rocket took off and it went vertically. So I did horizontal with my arm, and I realized what I did, that I messed up. And in that moment, I just was disgusted with myself. I just reacted. I said, shoot. Well, that's not actually the word I used. But the whole audience laughed. I was like, what happened? Wait a minute. I remember walking off stage. One of the other comedians put his arm around my shoulder. He said, don't worry, man. It's just your first time. And I remember thinking, don't worry? Did you see what I did? I got a laugh. Even though it was by accident, I said, I'm going to figure this out. I was never told I was funny. I had never been on stage before. But at that moment, I was hooked. The dream was real. I didn't care how long it took. I was going to figure this out. I'd get every mentor I could. I'd take every class that I could. I was going to figure this out. That was 1992. In 1993, this movie came out. You might have seen it, called Rudy. And it's a true life story about this kid who had this crazy, ridiculous dream. And he wasn't smart enough, fast enough, strong enough, talented enough. And he was dyslexic. How could he ever get into Notre Dame to play football for an Ivy League school? It was crazy. And I could relate. That movie, that story kept me going. I remember my brother saying, there's no way on earth no one will ever pay you. He was right. There was no logical way on earth. I was, in fact, the least likely to ever be funny. But God. I met my first mentor, Vinny Favorito. He taught me and gave me courage. He's what I needed at that point in my life. And he gave me the courage. I went up. I learned the number one habit was stage time, stage time, stage time. He said, Darren, any day that you don't get on stage is a day that you don't grow. What? I thought I had to be good. He said, no, you have to go up to be good. At the beginning, what I needed was courage. A few years later, he walked away. And I didn't think I could ever do it without him. And then stepped in my next mentor, Dave Fitzgerald, who he showed me the story that I had, the value that I had, that I was more of a teacher than I was a comedian. And that was a huge shift. See, I thought just to make people laugh to earn a living at it, you had to be a comedian. I didn't even know there was such thing as a speaker. So he changed my path and guided me. And then in 1998, he passed away again. I thought, I can't do it without him. And then Mark Brown, my coach, my Christian mentor, he helped me see my true value and find the story inside of me to help me inspire my audience, help make them laugh from my stories, from my examples, from my failures. So in 2001, when I took the stage,
do you remember a moment
and I walked away as the world champion of public speaking? But God. You know, I think about all the characters in the Bible. Paul, like, he tried to kill his coworkers. Moses had a speech impediment. So if you look at the Bible, there's all these stories of all these other people who were the least likely. Moses, to be his spokesperson, he had a stutter. He was slow of tongue. How about Paul? Paul tried to kill his coworkers. How about all the apostles? They're like the cast of The Deadliest Catch. And yet, God took the least likely. God uses the least likely to confound the wise. I was the least likely. This is just my God story. And I'm telling it to help you with your God story. If you're the least likely, if you've ever felt unworthy or like the least likely, I'm here to tell you, if God can do this in me, imagine what he could do in you. The quiet, shy kid who'd never been out of the country has now spoken in 44 international cities, every state in the country, and I get to do what I love to do for a living. I remember in the 1990s praying, starting to tithe, even though I had no income. I said, okay, God, I want to do this for a living. Help me out. It took a long time. Unfortunately, God sometimes takes a lot longer than we wish to help us get what we pray for. If you're the least likely, if you feel like the least likely, you probably heard the old adage, pray like it depends on God, work like it depends on you. I did both. I've been obsessed with true life stories like Soul Surfer and Blindside, The Rookie, all these stories. That's why I want to tell this story. I want to write this book. I want to create this movie. When I have no idea how, but I feel like I need to tell my God story to help someone else who feels like the least likely.